Good afternoon, David. 3 feet in the oven.
So I didn't want to interrupt Madam Director.
She's just getting the instructions for doing the cooking.
Afternoon, David.
Good afternoon, how are you today?
All right. Sorry, yeah. I've had better days, I've had worse days. Yeah.
I'm having the same as every day, a good day.
Yeah.
We'll just get Facebook on board, then we'll start thinking about getting this thing underway. No promises on how this one's going today, folks. A bit of ruckus in the green room before we start talking about these subjects.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we're going to out the road in the green room. You never know. Anyway, let's have a look and see who's in. Stephen, you're going to have to catch up later. Your spot's reserved on the naughty step. Don't worry about it. Afternoon, Mark Telfer. Good afternoon, Alex Adams. June, Barbara, Laurie, Eddie, Desiree.
Yeah, the idea of yours having a judge, when it's completely the headgear and all the rest of it with a gavel. And anytime you and I step out of line, it's like, I did order, that's one.
Order. You give it a line order. Hi, Ali. Hi, Jeanette. Hi, Tina. How's Dundee today? I hope it's as lovely in Dundee as it is here today. How's the weather where you are, David?
It's all right. It's a bit of cloud. Not much, though.
Fair to middling, then?
Fair.
Right. It's warm enough. It's dry, which is becoming an increasing problem for me.
But dry. In fact, it's dry. Why?
Tank only holds 20,000 litres of rainwater. It's almost empty.
Oh.
We've only had 59% of the usual rainfall so far this year.
Right.
A very dry year.
Don't worry, there's, the best weatherman I know is my wife. She gets, it's going to rain more. She's convinced it's going to rain hard. But it's like that for sight going a bit higher, a bit lower, a bit lower, right? When you go too high, you've eventually got to go low, haven't you? Eventually. So it's the same with the rain in Scotland. It gets dry, and then the way it can go is it doesn't get drier; it just goes wet, So that's that.
Tell you folks, don't know how this is going to go today. There's rabbit holes everywhere in this one. And we haven't even get by the hello yet. Right, we're going to start off with First Minister's questions, David. And I know you watched it. But funny enough, folks, this is a story that's been rehashed multiple times in the last 12 months. We had the killing of the
before you tell them the ins and outs, tell them what the nub of the story is.
First Minister's question today on youth knife crime. Youth violence is a subject that's come up 4 times this year. It would appear they're trying to make the people of Scotland fear the streets of Scotland. Now, youth violence came up last year around about this time when a young Asian fella got stabbed in Glasgow.
Yeah.
And then we had the outrageous behaviour around about the Easter time in Edinburgh with the youth running as savvy. And then we had the usual fireworks carry on with youth running the savvy. And then the other winter with a couple of teenagers stabbed. Right. But
isn't it important to any sort of colonising force to make sure the population are kept scared all the time? Scared of everything. Scared of the shadows. Yeah.
Well, that maybe even be the behaviour of a dominant partner in a union. It doesn't have to be called a colonising force.
That's right, yeah. That's right. Yes.
You can always put lipstick on a pig.
I've seen that before. Anyway,
seen that with David Cameron with his knob in it. While Bojo sat in the corner burning £50 notes. Anyway, anyway, knife crime and youth crime. And by the way, knife crime is now the exception, not the rule. Knife crime, Phil, is now the exception. And Phil, you and I are of a certain generation, and the boomers especially who came before us, David's generation, these guys know about knife crimes. They chipped everything that fucking moved.
Yeah.
Absolutely chipped everything that moved.
That's right.
The
best was when Stanley Blades come out, and it's like, you know, these people with cuts.
Anyway, let's get back to First Ministers. Russell Finlay, he brings it up because he's first up. He's the official opposition in Holyrood, and he says the streets are no safe for our children. And I thought, what the fuck? We've been talking about this before. We've put the stats up before, but we'll do it again. When was it?
The most important thing, at its height, we had Police Scotland that offered an amnesty. Bring us your chibs, bring us all your stuff, and dump it here, and that's it. We'll turn that eyes the other way, and you get rid of them, and that's it. It's over and done with, right? And it worked. It women worked, and that was
funny enough, David. That's because the young people who were carrying these chibs realised if they all dumped their chibs in, it would they move on to what we had during Generation X, especially the early part of it, and that was fisticuffs.
Yeah, softy shite. That's what.
I'll take fisticuffs out of bloody any day of the week. Anyway, you then move on to the Zennials that came behind us in the tail end of Gen X, and they're even less violent. Christ, you see the kids cuddling each other when they meet at a bus stop. You would never have done that. You know, but you don't have to believe us folks.
Hang on. If we'd have seen anybody doing that, they'd have been blooming chibbed or blooming beaten up. One out of two.
You're right. Anybody other than a fist stump and you've slaughtered.
So let's say that we have, as a people, we've matured slightly.
Aye, definitely. But the knife crime's a thing of the past. So let's get a wee bit of background and the timeline to this, will we?
Listen, guys. This wee bit of a laughing joke we're having is two old men talking about the old days. Right? When it was crap. Shut up. Right? When it was crap. Right? And it's like, I'm glad to see that by and large, our kids are becoming a bit more mature than we were.
Yes, definitely. Hi, Ice Ninja. Hi, Alistair. Hi. But you know, to be fair, we'll put the figures up umpteen times. I'll put the AI figures up and now, David. Then we'll go to source. And I'm going to give you a quick timeline, folks, so we can move on. 2005, Strathclyde Police set up something called the Violence Reduction Unit because the west of Scotland was especially a hot spot of knife crime. And at that time, Glasgow was the murder capital of the world.
Who's that woman calling her out for? The violence, something other. What was her group?
Oh, that one this morning. The youth violence campaigner.
Youth violence campaigner. I mean, my, what's silly? It's like saying you're for you've got youth violence.
That's why I said this morning. It should say anti-youth violence campaigner.
It's like campaign for a bit of youth violence.
Exactly. She needs to have a word with the record on how
kind of man into the street. Don't talk to them, eat them.
Anyway, I'll put the AI figures up, we'll give you the quick here, and then we'll take you to the actual organisation who set about reducing violence here in Scotland. They were founded in 2005. They were called the Violence Reduction Unit. They were founded by Strathclyde Police. They called the amnesty that David was talking about, and they took the violent behaviour of the people of the west of Scotland from being a crime issue to a public health issue.
Now, I'm going to stop you right there. Right? If we take the side of the idiot in charge of the Scottish Conservatives, right? What's he going to do? What's his idea to stop this happening? Or does he have any idea? Because, to be honest with you, what Swinney was saying, you know my feelings towards John Swinney at the moment. Fine, right? But what he was saying was absolutely dead right. He was saying he wasn't an expert on it. He hands it over to the experts, and they deal with it.
And we'll get to the experts in a wee minute, David. First,
Okay.
we'll talk the AI figures, okay?
Not
So
all AI the truth, by the way. So be careful.
and the reason why I'm doing this, folks, is because apparently we're being convinced that it's no safe to let our children out the street. Well, as grandparents and parents, it's important that we understand that it's very safe. In fact, it's never been safer.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Glasgow was still
Right. It was Glasgow. It was Glasgow that went to New York and taught the New York police how to deal with knife crime.
We'll get to Glasgow in a minute. But first thing I did, of course, was ask AI because that's what you do. So, how prevalent was the youth crime in Scotland? Youth violence in Scotland, teen violence, I wrote. So let's have a look. And it says teenage violence is present in Scotland, though overall rates of violent crime have decreased over the past few decades. A significant portion of violent crimes are reported by young people, and a notable percentage of teens have experienced or witnessed violence in the past years. However, there is also evidence of a reduction in violent offending behaviour among young people and early adolescence as well, meaning 16 to 30-year-olds. Okay. Now, according to the stats, 49% have I'll get it done. According to the stats, 49% have witnessed or suffered violence. And there was 13,695 violent crimes recorded last year where a young person was identified as an accused. The majority, 63.2%, of those were common assault. A further 31.7% were for threatening or abusive behaviour. So non-violent crime and violent crime. That makes up the majority of the crimes that were reported. But all youth, and these are the youth crime figures, right? Now,
but you have to remember, right, in amongst all of this, you have to accept that boys, especially, not women, boys especially, will, as they get up towards the puberty and beyond, get more and more violent in their behaviour. Of course they do. I'm not talking about when they go about trying to stab people, but they become naturally more violent. That's it's part of the university degree that my wife originally did. I read everything that she read just out of interest, and it's fact. And that's the reason why the death figures for people of a certain age were much higher than those later on, because they want to play. And if that play includes violence, then that includes violence. End of story. You know?
Well, see, never mind putting the blame on young men.
Yeah. Come on.
See, out of the very few, the less than 50% who witness violence. That doesn't mean the violence was done upon them. They talk about abusive behaviour, 31.7%, and common assault. Right, out of the percentage who say they witnessed crime or reported crime or whatever, 49%, sorry, who said they'd seen that. As I say, a percentage of that group were witness to crime, and the others has experienced violent crime. But most of that, they break it down into 4 further categories, and we'll see that in the next report. But the further categories are punching, kicking, physical weapons, that sort of thing. They'll know so much in the next slide, the next one. But the place we went to go to get the proper information was we went to the Violence Reduction Unit itself. Because, folks, if you want the actual information on crime in Scotland, especially violent crime, crime with sexual crimes with violence, sex crimes, then the Violence Reduction Unit is the place to go. Because these are the people who, over the last 2 decades, have taken the West of Scotland from being the most violent place in Europe to what they call the friendliest city in Europe, especially Glasgow. And people make Glasgow smiles better, all these campaigns. And as I say, the knife families to help moving the policy from a crime-based policy to a health-based policy, help that sort of, took it into the educational phase. But let's see what they have to say about youth.
Glasgow of nowadays, as opposed to what it was when I was a kid, right? Glasgow is lovely. Glasgow's an amazing place. Sorry to say it, but contrary to what Mr. Finlay is saying from the Conservatives, he's talking
Charles,
absolute. He's talking
also
fish.
to address this one, Charles, I know there's a lot of TV on violence on TV and computer games, but actually there isn't much violence in real life. That's the whole point. That's what
And
I'm
that's
trying.
the fact. It has been found to be an outlet where a kid would want to go and smash somebody's head in. They go and play Fortnite or whatever it is,
Aye.
and they get that taken out of them.
But let's get back to what the Violence Reduction Unit tells us over the last couple of decades, because they've been tracking people.
Yeah.
They've been tracking two groups. And we'll just quickly go through this because there's a lot of information on it. Where is it?
If what the previous lad was saying was true, then that would be true of every young person. It's not.
From the Scottish Violence Reduction Unit, as I say, it was set up with Strathclyde Police in 2012. It's now become a nationwide, a Scotland-wide initiative, right? And in this blog, Professor Susan McVie looks at the remarkable drop in violence among young people in Scotland over 2 decades. The blog first appeared on www.changingviolence.org and is reproduced here on the Scottish Violence Reduction Unit's website, so you can go and find it yourself with Professor McVie's permission. Over the last 20 years, Scotland's success in reducing violence has been attributed to many factors, but one thing is abundantly clear: it's children and young people who have paved the way for the changes. Trying to measure behavioural changes amongst young people is not easy, as large-scale surveys typically focus on adults and police records and statistics rarely tell us about behaviours of individual people. However, two large Scottish cohorts conducted 20 years apart show a remarkable drop in offending behaviour, including violence amongst those in early adolescence. We'll skip through what the two study groups were called, and we'll go down to this wee bar graph here. And this is the Edinburgh study for cohort born in 1986 to 87 on the left-hand side, and the light blue bar is 14-year-olds, and the dark blue bar, I believe, is 12-year-olds. Is that right, David?
Hang on, it's at the bottom. Yeah, the dark blue bar is stage 12, and the light blue bar is stage 4.
Tracked, say, they were born in 2012, 2004, 2005. Now, what you have to understand about these two studies, folks, they didn't track the kids for birth. They entered into the study at 12 when they joined secondary school. There was 4,200 in the first study, 5,200 in the second study. Yeah. Okay. Now, the offences, any offence, breaking the law of any way, in the 1986 to 87 cohort, 71% for 12-year-olds and 71% for 14-year-olds. But if we look at the 0405, 2004-2005 cohort, that had dropped to any offence down to 30% in the 12-year-olds and 31%. And the 14-year-olds. Now, if we look at the categories of violence that don't involve weapons, hitting, kicking, punching, in the earlier cohort, 53% in 12-year-olds and 46% in 14-year-olds. But if you look across the other side, it would appear that the 2004-2005 cohort, they barely lift their horns, 19% and 17%. So they're more violent at 12 than what they are at 14, so they're getting less violent as they get older.
Yeah.
Now, if we look at knife crime, carrying a weapon, back in 86 to 87, 12% carried weapons in the 12-year-old group and 23% in the 14-year-old group. But if we look across the other side again to the 2004-2005, 1% of 12-year-olds carry a weapon and 2% of 14-year-olds. And then we look at the final category, theft using force threat weapons. Even back in the day, it was only 2%, and now it's down to 1%. So over 2 decades, that it's been remarkable the turnaround in violent crimes, specifically in the youth cohort. So when
John Swinney actually mentioned that knife crime, or if that's been attacked with a sharp pointy instrument, he said, it's down by 69% since 2009.
Yeah.
2009.
That's when they started registering.
So, yeah, okay. What we can take from that is that maybe there's been a blip where you've had a few things happen at the same time. An old saying, one swallow does not make a summer. I know it's badly put for this kind of instance, but at the same time, it's true. You don't take everything from maybe 3 instances when you actually over thousands.
Let's break it into basic arithmetic for silly people, right? Yeah. But we don't have any silly people in our audience, but we'll break it into simple arithmetic for anybody who's watching. In the 16 to 30 cohort, you get 25 to 30% of the population. So what would that make it? About 1.2, 1.3 million.
Right.
Now, if there's only 13,000 violent crimes out of 1.3 million, I think we're doing all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Specifically violent crimes.
But being common sense government, we've got to keep the pressure up. Of course we do.
No, that's the thing that John was telling them when they were demanding harder sentences, or demanding this get done and that get done, that he does something. John said, we'll carry on doing what we always do. We'll let the experts deal with it. The experts at the Violence Reduction Unit who advocate for early intervention, education, and, when necessary, appropriate punishment.
That's right.
And that's
the Scottish government have been accused of blocking people going to prison. In actual fact, John Swinney put them right on that. That the paperwork reference that is that they are still liable to go to prison anyway if they are caught carrying a knife.
Yep. And DJ Marty says his fists were his weapons when he grew up, and he's 62, never carried a knife for protection. Never felt the need for it either, DJ.
We didn't. It's like, what would you carry a knife for? What enough? Were we more intelligent? No, because I believe it was because somebody did. I think, in actual fact, it was the Stanley blades that were the beginning of the rot.
Thank you, Liz. Late again, you'll find a fine. Can't phone in sick anymore and saying you burnt your arse in my candle. You're a carer. Forgiven, Liz. Yeah, that's you. No naughty step for you. Thanks very much. You're very generous.
That DJ Martin, he's got loads of money. He used to have a penknife for cutting apples. I didn't know that. Couldn't afford that.
To be fair, David, there have been occasions when I've carried a box knife, but it's for work, for opening pallets and things like that, you know.
What, no for chipping? No.
No, definitely not. A box knife at the tracks, you just bring it out. And
I used to think, why would you do such a? Why would one human being do such a thing to another human being? But
well, I can understand it, but I'm not going to get into it. But no, Prime Ministers today, John put them right. To be fair, David, they put them straight. And violent crime has been done it's down 69% since Glasgow and the west of Scotland was the murder capital of Europe.
Yeah, so and it once was, yes.
And it once was.
And the Glasgow police went across, sent a contingent across to New York, and
they're doing the very same in London, David.
How to deal with an assailant with the knife or whatever without being armed.
As I say, they're now doing the same thing in London with the net, because knife crime in London's out of hand at the moment. Right, as I say, about Prime Ministers, John put them back to rights to it, but folks, the reason why we're bringing this one up is because they are trying to frighten people. Yeah. Reassure your children that their children are safe. Reassure your grandchildren that they're safe. And tell them, don't be carrying chips, because what happens is it just leads to tragedy. If you're going to get into a fracas, use your hands. Use your feet.
That's right.
They're dangerous enough. They're already lethal weapons.
Yeah.
You know. Right, number 2. Let's move on. Scottish. Yeah, you're going to love this one. I don't know how this one's going to go, folks, because David's got a wee thing about this particular subject.
Hang
Scottish.
on. Peter Rag. Right,
Scottish councils collectively have a black hole of 650 million and need to make cuts. Apparently, that means a cut of staff and weakening of the public services which councils deliver, which includes social work, care for the elderly and the disabled, education, recreation, parks, cleansing. The list goes on. Now, David, as you know, I know you're not a fan of councils, and I can see you looking with glazed eyes out the window there, cheeky bastard.
right, sorry.
It does mean that people are going to lose their jobs.
I've got a really good idea, honestly.
No, you haven't.
I can sort the economics of it out overnight.
Oh, you can't, David. You can't. Believe me, and we're not going there. Right, you're right. There's going to be job loss. Let's keep in context, all right? Some more funds for Project Fear SMP bad. We're not doing that, mate. We're not doing that. We're Unity Food Banks. But thanks, Alistair. Very generous, man. No, David, I understand that you're right. By streamlining some of these services, we could probably do better.
Well, you would get rid of all the councillors.
we're not going there. I want you to keep it in the context of today and the setup as it is today. Now,
Right.
with 650 million black hole, what does it mean to you?
Sorry, what was that?
650 million black hole needing filled, what does it mean to you?
It means more money for the councillors to go on holiday.
No, what you mean? Okay then, what do you think it means for the councils?
It means.
Or let me rephrase it again, see if we can get you on track this time. How do you think they're going to plug the black hole?
Oh, therefore, cut out more services that people rely on. Is with that? Eh?
Exactly. That's exactly what's going to happen. People are going to lose their jobs. Services are going to get turned on the ground.
Yeah.
Your bins will be collected every
stupid situation. I won't tell you who I got it from. There's an arm's length set up at Western Berkshire Council called They Work For Us. Right? Okay. Do all sorts. All of them were losing their jobs.
They will.
21 of them were losing their jobs, and yet the councillors were getting a raise. How do you figure that one?
Because there's always so much in the pot.
No, it's because there's always so much in the pot for the councillors.
No, David. Actually, they're the least paid.
They don't attend council meetings because they have a full-time job and they're doing the council bit as a bit of fun.
You want to take on the stress of 2 jobs for less than 20 grand a year? You do that.
Yeah. End of the day, let's
you deal with the tax base. You do that.
Let's take the council thing off them. Then they've only just need to deal with their own.
That's where we're going. We're keeping it in context here, David. We already know your opinion on this one. It means people are going to lose their jobs. And it's the same thing when we were talking about public pay sector pay rises. We pointed out then it was going to create a black hole. Now, the public sector deserved those pay rises. We've never argued that, but we did say there was going to be pay to come with it, did we not?
Yeah.
Well, guess what, Pio? The pain's arrived. If you're a low-paid employee in a local government employee at this point in time, or you're a middle-ranking manager at this point in time, you will be bought on it for your future. So these are consequences of being in this union, folks. Let's get this straight. Westminster has chosen austerity as a policy since 2011 and is being part, and that's a political choice, folks. And as we are part of this union, we are having austerity imposed upon us as well. Austerity imposed upon us, and that means there's less in the pot for everybody.
And what does that equal? Time for
You get it, you get it in.
independence. Independence.
Right, let's move on. Scottish Government Advisory Committee on Climate Change has given the Scottish Government a new set of targets and milestones to reach if they are to stay on track for net zero 2045. Right, the Climate Change Committee says to make net zero by 2045, emissions need to fall by 57% in the next 5 years. 54 by 50 to 57% more than what they were in 1990 for the next 5 years, and to 69% less than what they were in 1990 by 2035. And then, of course, we're going to make up the other 31% in the decade to come.
Yeah.
I would say that the Scottish Government set itself up to fail again, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah. But everybody's taking the eye off the ball. Everybody, right? And this argument, this stupid argument that says that man's not to blame, it's natural and all the rest of it, right? I'm sorry, guys, that was proved the other way. Man is to blame. It's like if you have a cup that's almost full and you add 5 milliliters to it and cause it to overflow, right? Then you are responsible for making that cup overflow. It's the same with climate change. Climate change might be up there, but the man's efforts are taking it up to there. And that difference is where crops don't grow, seriously, over a certain temperature, and also where the CO2 figure that the guy from Reform is saying 0.0043% is CO2. He's talking out his fucking arse. As usual.
Sign a picture. Don't get like you lose yourself off a picture.
As usual.
Alistair, do us a favour, will you? At the end of this programme, when the show finishes, could you drop a link to Sir Larry the Cat's a YouTube channel in the comments there after the show's finished, please, Alistair? Because I tried to do the link that you put up in the live chat and I couldn't get it. So
why is it, would you say, David, that the eye has been taken off the ball? Would you say it's down to rich people going, oh no, we can't afford that, that's silly. It's like we should just live our lives as they are. It's all natural anyway. We're all going to die anyway, so we may as well enjoy it.
I think it's people that don't have their eye in the future that their eye on now. You know? And it is very, very... Alistair, I meant once the programme's finished, there's a section below the programme in the watch back where you can put a comment. Can you put it there right after we're finished, please, Alistair? Thank you. But, what do you call it? I think they've taken their eye off the ball the new, and I think they're looking at the cost. I mean, if you look at the Daily Fail headline yesterday, David.
Who's they? Who do you describe as being they? I think they've taken their eyes off the ball. Who they?
Well, you start with the government, then you start with the fossil fuel companies who are investing heavily in transition and have decided to go against that now.
They're driven by shareholders. Shareholders aren't these magically intelligent people that really keep an eye. All they're interested is that. Well, how much am I getting for my shares? Oh, I'm getting an extra 10,000 this quarter. Right? Oh, that's magic, right? It doesn't tell them it doesn't tell the shareholders, or the shareholders don't tell them we need to do this, we need to do that. They don't. Even with a meeting of the shareholders might turn up. They might only take notice of maybe less than 5% of the actual thing that goes on, the meeting that goes on. Right?
Well, so, politicians, fossil fuels, let's try and keep it a wee bit simpler than going into boardrooms, David.
Yeah, but no, David, it's a problem. Unless we tell people exactly how things are, they ain't going to get it.
We are telling them how things are.
No, if you don't tell them that the shareholders that we call the bad guy, They haven't a fucking clue what's
You
going
obviously
on.
don't watch this programme, do you? I'm forever telling people to look at where their money's invested.
No,
Put it in ethical shares.
David, that counts for that. That counts for that. Seriously. It's a big picture. We should be explaining the big picture all the time.
I am explaining the big picture. Consumers have power if they decide to wield it.
Right, so if somebody was going to make 10 grand off their Shell shares this quarter,
David,
right?
stop fixating on the individual shareholder.
You're going to tell them to sell those shares, because all that happened is those shares will be sold to somebody else.
No, I'm the bloody consumer. I'm going to tell them I'm going to stop buying their product.
Right, okay.
If BP is investing in green technology and Shell's decided to diverge away from green technology, I'll buy my fuel for BP. If Scottish Power and Scottish Southern Electric are diverging from fossil fuels and are generating their electricity from renewables, I'll buy my electricity from them.
Right, the first thing I would do is I'd go, what's the ulterior motive?
We know that greed's the ulterior motive. The reason why they've taken their eye off the ball is, as I was about to explain when you intervened once again, was in the paper yesterday morning while you were on the paper review.
Fucking gavel used. Get the gavel used.
Before you intervened again, order. Before you intervened again, I was about to explain. The reason was in the paper review yesterday morning with you and I, and it was in the front page of the Daily Mail. £750 million a year for the transition to net zero. I asked you about it, you went something, and I said fucking bargain. Right. So greed is the motive why they've taken their eye off the ball.
Yes.
We have to use our might to put them back on the ball.
But what I'm trying to explain is that greed is actually taking place in the boardroom.
Yes.
People that are employed per se by the shareholders. So the shareholders, at the end of the day, they may have no idea of what a big company are actually doing.
Well, the majority of shareholders won't, because they'll be hedge funds. They'll be my pension. If I allowed my pension to invest in fossil fuels.
Yes.
Right, so that's why I talk to people about divesting from these industries and looking after where you put your money.
I think that's a very, very good idea. It's like my pension used to be. I could actually invest in Pacific Basin. That was that. Pacific Basin seemed to be the important one, because that included China and Japan and Taiwan.
When your pension fund decide to invest its money, actually, I mean, other ones invest in tobacco industry, arms, oil. Just folks, when you go, even your workplace pension, you can decide where they invest your money. But if you're going to invest in tobacco, oil, arms, you're going to get the highest investment return, because these bastards drive wars and things like that so they can make money.
Right. Is health insurance at the moment.
Anyway,
it's going to happen if we're going to have to fucking fight for it to keep our NHS free at the point of use.
Anyway, back to the climate targets. The SNP government have set itself up to fail again.
Yeah, I know.
Because there ain't no way, when very little of the energy policy that is actually put into place here in Scotland is legislated for in Scotland, that they're going to actually be able to achieve 2045 net zero. Because if Westminster decides to start pumping oil and gas like fuck, burn baby burn, then we are going to be producing more emissions. If we go into overdrive on construction the way we need to, we are going to be high on emissions. One of the biggest emissions emitters, creators in society is concrete plants.
Yeah, that's right.
We need
steel plants as well for steelwork buildings, right? Seriously, it's all big users of fossil fuels. That's
But
it.
the real reason, folks, is greed, and we've seen it and being put in big red letters in the front of the mail, big black letters in the front of the mail yesterday. 750 million a year paid to achieve net zero. 750 million a year to get to net zero with 2045 and save the planet for the future is a fucking bargain.
That's if everybody else does it.
That's if everybody else does it, David. That's correct. Anyway, let's move on. Now, the SSRG had a conference at the weekend, David, and there they had a guy called Professor Robert Black saying that Scotland ceased to exist in 1707 and that it was a hostile takeover and not a treaty or not a union. What do you make of that?
Dead simple. This is something we've heard over and over and over again. We heard it from Fluffy Mundell, where he said, there's no Scotland went, and now it's all just England, right?
No,
Okay.
it's great, right?
Well,
They're not stupid enough to say England.
in this story, that tube for the Labour, he basically said the same thing. Right? This Professor Robert Black, as you'll remember, was the chap that he set up Camp Zeist for the Lockerbie bombing, and the trial of Abdul Megrahi, right? So he's done nothing really since 2007 when he retired. He's an emeritus professor, right? And I've got to say, he's taken the direction he has to be opposite to the direction of all the other legal eagles who say, no, it's a treaty, and a treaty can be torn up at any time, providing we've got the back of the people.
And it also includes the highest legislator in the land who agrees it's a treaty, and that's Westminster itself.
That's right. Because, come on, can I tell you that?
In 1967, the United Nations were trying to work out what was a state and what was a country. So what they did was they asked the constituent parts of the United Nations to submit whether they were a country or a state. And there's a lot more states. There was a lot more states out there then what there is now, but there are still many. I mean, there's a lot of federal states. I believe Australia's a federal state. Spain's a federal state. We used to be USSR, that was a federal state. It's gone. Germany's a federal state. The UK's not a federal state, but it is a state. As stated in 1967 at the United Nations, it's made up of constituent parts in an equal union.
Yeah.
And a voluntary union, sorry, that was the terminology. Voluntary union, get it right.
Yeah.
The United States, of course, being the most obvious, the big states, you know.
The most important thing is to be a member of a state. You have to agree with what the central government are doing. Otherwise, it's not a voluntary union, right? And that there are situations in America. One of the big ones is California, Texas. They're two big, enormous states that are going, no, you're not doing it for us, right? And it's they really they want to be independent. Of course they do, right?
Easy. We can all say Scotland's a colony all we want. It's not how it's going to look to the United Nations.
Correct.
The UK has been declared a state made up of voluntary parts. Sorry, parts in a voluntary union. It's made up of component parts in a voluntary union. That's how it's registered with the United Nations.
Hence, you have the statement of Professor Robert Black, who is trying to state in that Scotland is colonised. And so that at the end of the day, the SSRG can go with Liberation and with Salvo to the United Nations and ask them to decolonise us.
Aye, good luck with that.
We always go, well done, guys, on you go. Right?
Another eye on the fire, you can't get on. You know, David, I find the research has been much more interesting than the nonsense they want to do with it.
Yeah.
You know, but who are we to criticise another eye on the fire? We're not doing that. If the SSRG, Liberation Scotland, think that they have a different route out via the international community.
Sarah Sawyer's cracking me lady, really was, and it should very good. Get on, do it, darling. You can get us free, brilliant. I'll get.
Still, we're actually there compiling the constitution.
No, she did more than that, and she was on about during her interview. Remember, she was pushing liberation.scot as well.
Well, as I say, it's fair enough. Just another eye on the fire.
Yeah.
You know, but we all know that there's only one way out of this union, and that's for the Scots to have a plebiscite and tell Westminster to go to fuck.
That's right.
The only way out.
Dead right.
Right, let's move on for the reforms. Reforms been accused of racism in the Hamilton, Larkholt and Stonehouse by-election, and a video they put up of Anas Sarwar where they clipped one of his speeches saying that he would give preferential treatment in office to the Pakistani community.
As far as I'm concerned, get on, enjoy yourselves, have a good civil war between Reform and Labour. We'll just run the country as we are, and we'll do it. Simple as that, right? There you go.
Aye, Sandra, I know John's under pressure to get independence back on the cards. He's no choice. I mean, the pressure's coming in right across the party, and I dare say this group here have been part of it. You all know how to use a search. You all know how to send an email. You know, you all know how to berate your MSP. You all know how to apply pressure. And then, of course, the idea that there are pressure groups within the SNP urging this back to the fore, which there is. Like, for example, David and I.
The important one is, believe it or not, a really, really powerful one is the act of the open letter. Now, open letter can be a video that you do, or it can be a letter that you write. It's not just a case of a letter to John Swinney. It's a letter to John Swinney that everybody else can read and agree with, or whatever, right?
Or at least your own audience can read and agree with, and if they want to share it wider, then a wider audience can read and agree with.
That's right.
Or see a video, aye. But anyway, Reform, right to form, go in on the race card.
Yeah, get it. As far as I'm concerned, it's like, go for it, guys. Big style.
Aye, get in about it.
Sarwar is not somebody I support. Reform, definitely not. Right, there you go. So, fill your boots, please.
Jim, you're entitled to your opinion. If you don't think there'll ever be independence in a million years, that's up to you. But you might find you're on the right. You might find you're on the right fucking channel. But you're more than welcome here, Jim. You're more than welcome.
He's entitled to his opinion. Right?
Yes.
Maybe a million years is just a wee bit. We were rich. It might be 999,999 and a half years. But at the same time, I don't think it'll be a million years. There you go.
There you go. So, Reform, straight in on race, and they pick on the Muslim. Anybody surprised?
It's the picking on the little guy. But Sarwar is not somebody I would be. Anybody else, I'd go, oh, that's dreadful. That's dreadful. But picking on Sarwar, nah, get on with it. Sarwar's told plenty of porkies in his life, so he can come out a few crackers.
Waverley Road did well in the constituency anyway. They're not picking up, and it looks like the split vote between them will mean that the SNP will hold the seat. That's about the best we can. That's what we can take, you know. Right, let's move on. Starmer and Lammy lambast Israel. Did they?
They use stronger language. Definitely. I actually heard Lammy saying, stop it, at one point, right?
I also heard him saying monsters.
He never said that, did he?
Oh, aye.
Oh, fuck's sake, that's dreadful.
In fact, you know, I felt as bad for Lamy, for the Israeli people when Lamy called them extremists as I did for when Michael Gove called us extremists. I was pissing myself laughing.
Exactly.
And why was I pissing myself laughing? Because they didn't mean a fucking word, did they?
No.
Not one single word. They backed it up with any actions. And that very evening, from RAF Akrotiri, the surveillance flights on behalf of Israel resumed. The very evening
So
that the two lying bastards were allegedly calling Israel out in a joint statement with Canada and France.
if you imagine, if you were Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and you said, "Oh, that's dreadful what this particular country are doing," right? We get any? We help them out militarily. Right. Stop, and that means stop right there and then. If the pilot's getting his arse into the seat and he's just getting comfy, get him out that seat. And that flight's cancelled. That's so. As far as I'm concerned, see Starmer and Lamy, lying, monstrous bastards.
Covenanter soldier, that's called a settler colonialism. That's what you're talking about when they move in, immigrants for unity. What they're basically doing is overrunning your population with their population.
Yes.
Right.
However, being Scottish, we open their door.
Did you see Netanyahu's reply to the pressure being put on by Canada, the UK, and France? Did you see what he did? He let 5 aid trucks in to Gaza. They need 500 a day to feed the population. He let 5 in. 2 of them were carrying body bags. There's a fucking statement of intent. And there's a get it up, you France, UK, and Canada.
Yeah. And what about the diplomats that?
We'll get there.
Over the head. You were going to get that away, right?
Right now you brought it up. 25 diplomats were in the occupied Palestinian territory of the West Bank to have a look at conditions there. They were there officially as they were invited by the Palestinian peoples, whatever they call them, that run the place.
Yeah, it was Ireland and several other countries, right?
Right. Anyway, the Israeli government gave them corridors they could go down and places they could look at. And they deviated off course. So warning shots were fired above their heads, apparently, and they were told, get back in your corridor. So they weren't getting to speak to the Palestinian people in the West Bank, and they weren't getting to see the conditions that they lived in. But I thought Netanyahu's response to pressure from Canada, France, and Germany was particularly telling when he said, okay, I'll let you in. I'll send in 5 trucks, and 2 of them are carrying body bags, by the way. Get it up, you. You know. So there you go, folks. Tell you it was clickbait, didn't we, David? We told them it was nothing more than clickbait.
Yeah, I know, but still, no. The real fact of the matter is that the time is up for a lot of these children, the 14,000 babies that we're looking at. You know, a young mother with a baby in a situation like that will feed from the breast, right? And the one thing you have to realise is that if the mother is starved, she stops producing, she stops lactating, and that means then the baby is starved.
Aye, it's a couple of days since we were on together. Well, we were on yesterday morning. We only talked about it that much yesterday morning. Oh, we weren't actually yesterday morning, but 24 hours has passed of the 48 hours that's been allocated for these kids to die. It's pretty horrific, folks. It is pretty. Right, let's move on, David, because it's no. I don't want to dwell on it. It's pretty hard going. Reeves and Rayner go to war over taxation. And benefit cuts. Okay. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the Chancellor and Angela Rayner are going to war over the Chancellor's austerity choices. Rayner's want to actually tax hedge funds, tax savers, and even tax some of the rich to prevent having to borrow to improve public services.
Is that Rayner that was talking about building 1.5 million houses?
That
when,
one,
when there was no chance of building sort of a few.
The very one.
Right.
Anyway, she doesn't want the Labour Party to choose austerity policies. She wants them to fund it by taxing taxing hedge funds, which are rich, even though it's all their pensions that's in them. Hedge funds have got a lot of money, and some of the rich. So it would appear yesterday it was rumoured that they were going to have a go. Rayner actually had a go at Reeves and the Commons and her policy choices. I mean, let's face it, when you get right down to it, Reeves and Starmer have chosen to go down the austerity route.
Yes.
By keeping the benefit cap on two-child, by taking away the winter fuel payment, cuts to PIP. They have decided that austerity is the way forward.
But can you really imagine being a campaigner for Labour on any of the elections that take place, going round the doors, and it's like you've got that to face. It's like, most people at some age have got grandparents, right, or they've had grandparents, they're gone now, right? They maybe know a family that's very, very poor, right? So you're going to, the two-child cap thing becomes an issue, right? But people that are it's now called disability living allowance in Scotland, but it's still called PIP down in England, right? Where you got PIP being attacked. You rely on that, and other people know that people rely on that. So can you imagine what it's like for any of those campaigners? Those campaigners will be the same campaigners that are campaigning for MPs or MSPs or wherever, right? And they're going, hey guys, we can't campaign for Labour anymore because of what they're doing to the people.
Aye. Well, anyway, Rayner wants to go back to the idea of a changing fiscal policy and raising tax as opposed to cutting services.
Yeah.
I can't see that happening.
Yeah.
And even this talk about winter fuel U-turn, David, we may as well deal with that now.
Well, just before you move on, right? The most important thing is that the newspapers will see this as being the first missiles dropped across the border, right? So it'll be, watch out for it, guys. You're going to see a lot more of this.
Oh, good. Listen, if there's a civil war within the Labour Party right now, it'll suit me.
But it's not a civil war. It's not a civil war because these people in the Labour Party, they've got their taste of power. They don't give a shit about anybody apart from themselves.
Well, they want to hear shit about the 380 MPs sitting behind their arses.
And I'm 90 grand. No, I'm talking about the MPs. And
not the MPs at all.
I've got their £90,000 wage coming in.
Fucking shit. Don't give my head for it.
This is great. This is brilliant. If I stay in this for as long as possible, they'll keep their trap shut, tell you.
David, at 90 grand a year, most of these people could be making more in the private sector.
Yeah, but prior to getting into the power, there wouldn't have been a case. You'd be lucky if they get a job working in a fucking call centre, right? Yeah. Now they've been an MP, different matter. You've been an MP, right? Okay.
I think a lot of them were university graduates, and a lot of them did have lives before they became MPs.
Nah, don't believe you. So you need to go through each and every single one of them and add poke holes in each one of them.
David, let's stick to the point of the one before we go away from it. Was Rayner and the newspapers are going to play on a civil war in the Labour Party in order to break the government. It was going to happen.
Right.
England is an actually right-wing country, and
Right.
they still perceive this right-wing Labour government to be left of centre. It would appear they don't quite understand the political compass anymore.
Yeah.
But we can put that down to intellectual decline. Right, Starmer backs down a little on winter fuel payment. What's he going to do, David?
He's going to think about it. He's going to give it a bit of consideration. I do that. He's going to rub his chin maybe 3 times, and then no do anything.
Correct. Or he will raise the threshold, as I said this morning, on the tax credit, the pension tax credit, to allow maybe $1 million more out of the 10 million that didn't get their payment last year to get it. You know what I mean? It'll be a minimum effort. Now, we haven't got time to go to the Chagos Islands or to Trump and his carry on with the South African president and accusing him of exterminating the Boers and a genocide. Absolutely fascinating stuff, but I'm afraid we don't have the time for it. It's 5 p.m., folks. So, sorry, thanks very much for your super chats. Thanks to the moderators for moderating.
Yeah.
Thanks to David for taking us off in such wonderful directions as usual. The gavel has stayed firmly planted on the table.
So are the fingers.
Aye, order. This court is now in recess. Bye, folks. Time for independence and keeping our eyes on the prize.
Bye, David.
Bye, David.